Hi everyone. I wanted to talk a little bit about the very most basics of CSS. What is CSS? CSS is cascading style sheets. What does that mean exactly? Well, it is the technology that we use to apply visual styling to our websites. We specify how visual styles should be configured in what we call documents that we call style sheets. They are .css documents. You see that over here on the right side. And we then link those documents into HTML files by using a link tag in the head of a document of an HTML file, and that's typically the way that we get CSS onto our page. However, there is a cascading aspect of CSS, so we can witness how this cascading works if we look at a little bit of simple styling. So what you're looking at now on the left side here is a little demo HTML file, and it has a style sheet link to it, which is demo.css, which is over here on the right hand side. And right now demo.css is specifying font family sans serif, and if I view the demo.html file by browsing to it in a new tab, you can see that in fact this entire page is sans serif. Why? We know that by default web pages show up in Times New Roman or a serif font, whatever you have installed on your computer. The reason is that we've selected the HTML element and we have set a style attribute which is called font family to the value sans serif. Now that's a lot of different pieces all at once, so let's take that apart a little bit. First of all, from within your CSS style sheet, you use selectors to target different parts of the HTML document that you plan to affect. So over here in the HTML document, I have an element that is HTML. All HTML documents will have this element. For any styles that I want to apply to every single thing on the page, I can always just apply them to the HTML element itself. So I've configured this HTML element to have the font family sans serif. I could configure a different element to have a different family. So maybe the H1 element, I could configure it to have the font family serif. And if I do that and then refresh my page, you'll notice that my H1 here is now in a serif font, but all the rest of my page, including the H2 that's down here, is actually in a sans serif font. So that's a really useful tool to be able to configure the way that different things look on the page. Now, one thing that I could do is change the color of the font for the entire page, which is often something that you do when you're working on a design for a website. You give it a background color and a font color and everything. So I'm going to make all the content of this page green in order to illustrate the way that cascading works. We can also note that the links stayed blue and purple, which are actually the default link styles, and we haven't directly styled links, so that's why they've stayed that way. But all of the other content that does not have, a color applied to it is now green. There are two other ways to have styles affect your HTML. One way is to put what is known as an embedded style sheet into the head of your document. And so to do that, I open up a style tag and I can just type the styles the same way that I would type them into my CSS style sheet. So I can say HTML color red, and what will happen is that because this style comes after this style sheet, and because this style is in the document, it's an embedded style sheet, so it's going to take precedence when it comes to cascading. So all of our content here, when we refresh, will turn red. Now, there's another way to add a style to an HTML file, and that is called an inline style. And so for this H1, which we've already configured in the external style sheet to have the font family serif, we're going to configure it to have a special style by using a style attribute. So attributes can be added to HTML tags, and the style attribute can contain style information. You have to write it all on one line, so it has to be written more like this. And you don't write out a selector because that wouldn't make any sense in, you're applying it to a specific element already. So you just write out color, and we'll make this one purple. And you can use semicolons even to change. We can say font family monospace, and it will even change the font family as well. So now if we refresh, you can see that this H1 is now purple and in the monospace font, while everything else on the page is still in the sans serif font in red. So once again, these styles are coming from an external style sheet. This style that makes all of the content of the HTML red is coming from an embedded style sheet inside of the HTML file. And the style that makes this demo page purple and in the monospace font is an inline style, which is written directly onto an HTML element. For the most part, you'll always use external style sheets to do most of your design styling. Embedded style sheets may be used for some specific things to accommodate different templating languages and things like that. And inline styles are generally written via JavaScript to enhance the presentation of some kind of interactive element on the page. And because they're dynamically controlled, the inline style makes sense. That's not actually something that gets delivered to the browser, but something that gets manipulated by JavaScript. In general, your rule of thumb is to keep your styles in your external style sheets, because that allows you to have two things. One, you have one place where you go to see all of your styles, so you can keep better track of all of the styles that you have. And two, you are able to apply your style sheet to multiple pages. So you could link with the same link tag on different HTML pages to the same style sheet, and the same styles would apply as long as that HTML had those elements that were being targeted. So again, we target HTML elements with a selector, and then we configure the visual presentation with an attribute. That's the basics of CSS. I want to continue for one more moment to talk just a little bit about using classes and IDs, because those are really two ways that we affect styles quite a bit. And really, in terms of IDs, we should leave those for navigation. And we don't want to change IDs because somebody might have linked to the page with an ID in the URL, and we want to make sure that that link doesn't die. However, it might be that we want to style something, specifically, and we can't just select, for example, all of the P's. Let's say that we select all of the P's and set their color to be goldenrod, because that's a great color to make all of your content text. If we do that and then refresh the page, you'll notice that all of the paragraph tags now get turned goldenrod. The headings have gone back to green because we removed all of the inline and the embedded styles, and so we're back to having everything be green for the HTML. And then the unordered list also became green. So what if we wanted to make just this first paragraph? What if we wanted to make it purple? What we could do is just style the first class. And the way that we reference a class when we're styling is with a period in front of it. So we can say dot first color purple. That will turn the very first paragraph, where we've given it that class first, to have purple. So now this first paragraph is purple. But the style that I wrote actually doesn't even care that it's on a paragraph. It just is looking for that class of first. So I could add that class to anything else that I wanted to. So here, this additional information heading, I can say class equals first. It doesn't make a lot of sense from a semantic point of view, but it does. It will make that heading purple. So that's how classes can be used to apply very, very specific styles. We can also affect things based on their IDs. So, for example, this H1 is ID demo page. We could change this. Right now it's becoming serif. We can set the color to pink, and we can change this to be pound demo page. And what this will do is target the ID, the hash sign or the pound sign, however you like to say it. That indicates an ID. And so hash demo page or pound demo page affects anything with the ID of demo page that's on the page. So that first H1 should change for us here. And as we see, it turns pink. And it's still serifed. So that's basically how class selectors, ID selectors, and basic element selectors work. So this is a class selector, this is an ID selector, and this is a basic element selector. That's how these things work, and that's how CSS makes your web pages look great. If you just keep on adding more and more styles and setting more and more different attributes, we've only looked at font family and color, but there are literally hundreds of them, then you can build up a page that looks as good as anything else that you see around. So, magic of CSS. It's pretty wonderful. Thanks for watching.